ملك الملوك
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic Toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.
And welcome back to another week on the Catholic Toolbox, the art of practical Catholicism. I'm your host and founder, George Manassa, here as we equip you with practical tools to live your faith in our modern world of today. And this week I brought in a friend of mine, Monica Doumit.
Lovely to be here.
Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
First time in person.
Exactly. I think we've done, 2 episodes before? And they were all over Zoom. I think it was during lockdown or post-lockdown. We're working out of Zoom. And then finally, you're here in studio. Welcome to the studio.
So good. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I mean, you're a very familiar face to many people around the Catholic world.
To some.
The Catholic bureaucracy as well. And how is that going?
The Catholic bureaucracy?
Yes.
There's no bureaucracy in the Catholic Church. What are you talking about, George? Scandalous. Absolutely scandalous.
Yes. And you talked about before you have a vocation to be a Catholic bureaucrat.
Yeah, exactly right.
Sometimes.
And actually, one of the really disappointing things during COVID was that we were classed as non-essential workers. And as if the world can survive without Catholic bureaucrats, right?
Exactly. Salvation of souls.
Exactly right.
Yes.
There's an essential nature to being a Catholic bureaucrat.
Exactly. I mean, you're working every day to save souls, to increase the numbers and bring people to Christ. But it's great to have you back in studio, and I've been reading some of your articles, enjoying some of your articles in the Catholic Weekly. And for those who don't know you, or first time listening here on the show, who are you?
That's a big question. Only now, sure. So I'm Monica Doumit. I am currently the Director of Public Affairs for the Archdiocese of Sydney. What that means is I assist Archbishop Anthony Fisher with things like government relations, public policy on a lot of the contentious and more controversial issues, campaigning and things like that. I come to the Archdiocese with a legal background, so I spent 10 years as a mergers and acquisitions lawyer.
Oh, well.
I was in Sydney for the most part, living in London. Actually, when I got the call up from the Archdiocese, I was living in London and they said, hey, we think you should come back to quit your job, move back to Sydney and come work for the Archdiocese.
Oh, that's great. That's a sign to come back to Sydney.
And so I quit
You
my
need
job.
a sign to leave London with how beautiful it is. I love London.
Yeah.
You feel like a more refined home, more refined Sydney. Yeah.
I don't know, I was working all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't see much of London. But so that was about 10 years ago I moved back. Moved back to Sydney and started out in communications for a few years with the Archdiocese, worked a bit on the Royal Commission, the same-sex marriage campaign, and then came back and said, look, I think I want to do politics and policy full-time. And so had taken a job in Canberra. And the Archbishop stepped in and said, look, if you want to do politics and policy, then why don't you stay here and do it for me? And so created this amazing role that I get to do now, which is a lot of government relations policy, all of the things that I wanted to do, but I get to do it.
Is it with just the Archdiocese of Sydney or the greater church in general?
Well, so my role is just for the Archdiocese of
Yes.
Sydney, but when we're talking about laws that affect New South Wales, obviously whatever Sydney does have an effect on other places. So our lobbying will affect, hopefully, the outcome of some of these laws. And there are a few different equivalents of my role in various other dioceses, and so we try to work together on a national perspective as well.
So you're a Catholic lobbyist?
A little bit, yeah.
or relations and lobbying?
Yeah, a little bit.
Which is good, yeah. We need good Catholic lobbyists. I mean, we all should be lobbyists. We're lobbyists for Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. But hopefully not everyone has to get bogged down in the stuff that I deal with every day.
Some have to be more bureaucratical.
Yes.
We need people there, we need people out there, we need people everywhere. You know, that's the important thing about the church. Everybody has a role and everybody has a part to play. We all have to function so that the church can grow effectively. You know, it's not everyone's called to be a bureaucrat in your shoes, but not everyone's called to just be on the ground perhaps, or in different areas, or in their companies or corporate life. Everybody has a place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would say my call is to stand at the gate with a bat to beat out some of the bad forces.
Yes, exactly.
So that other people can do the work of evangelization and spreading the gospel, and families can raise their kids and everything like that.
You make it a lot easier for us.
Well, my hope is to try and preserve as much space possible as I can.
Exactly.
For you to do your thing.
So you get to do fun things like go to Senate hearings and Senate committees and lobby political parties.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's fantastic work. It's important work, and I think really, I mean, you bring to the show a lot of good updates for current political issues in the Catholic world that relate to the faith. So let's go into today's topic. Mm-hmm. We're talking about something new that's come up. And I know when you arrived outside the studio and I saw you there, and we got chatting straight away. You said, I said to you, what's new? There's a lot of things that come up, or a lot of things that are new that are happening, you know, outside the walls of the church and within the walls of the church. So what's the latest?
Well, the big thing in New South Wales at the moment is actually as early as Thursday, probably not Thursday, but as early as this Thursday, debate could start on something called the Equality Bill. So proposed by the independent member for Sydney, Alex Greenwich. His greatest hits album include our abortion laws, our euthanasia laws and everything like that. So not really massive friend of the church. And so he's got this bill that he's calling the Equality Bill, which seeks to amend 20 different pieces of legislation in a whole variety of ways, I guess in his argument, to promote equality. But actually, Archbishop Fisher, before a parliamentary inquiry actually, described it as having a very anti-religious undercurrent, and I think that that's probably true. So yeah, that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yes.
I won't go through all 20 pieces of legislation. Don't worry. I'll just hit I'll hit the highlights or the lowlights.
Well, that's something new that's come up. So we're looking for something new. What's happening around the church? That is something big. That's actually huge.
Yeah.
And so, what are the 5 pieces? We're just discussing it outside the show, just outside the studio. What are the 5 pieces that you mentioned? And they're huge. It's going to shock the listeners listening here tonight.
So the first is changes to our Anti-Discrimination Act that would remove all of the current religious protections that are in there. So at the moment, say for example, a Catholic school can hire on the basis of a person's faith and also a person living in accordance with the faith.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to be a teacher who goes out and waves a pride flag in June or something like that, if you're a kindergarten teacher who decides that they want to transition to be an opposite gender, the school can say, look, thank you very much, but we don't think that you've got a place here.
Okay.
And not only schools, parishes, chanceries, if me as a chancery
because it's part of the job description. You know, if you want to apply to an Islamic school, surely, you know, it's in their right to actually want to preserve their faith and protect their faith and hire people who actually believe in it to protect the integrity and know the Islamic faith. You know, same with the Jewish faith or our faith or any other religion.
Absolutely. And look, political parties have this right. Right? So you can hire or fire me on the basis of my political opinion if you're a political party, because the whole idea is that, I mean, I'll never get hired by the Greens. That's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fair, right? And I shouldn't. And
you defend their right to
defend their right to not hire someone like me, because
exactly.
I would do everything I could to undermine their mission if they actually hired me.
Exactly.
That's fine. So they have a right not to.
It's important that we say that.
And that's
that you are okay with them not hiring you.
I'm okay with them not hiring me. And is it discrimination? Yes, it's discrimination, but it's just discrimination. It's just, right? And it's the way the world should work.
I don't know how much maths level you did at high school, but there is a scientific term called discriminate against certain variables. Discrimination is actually a scientific term.
We discriminate all the time. The question isn't whether or not we're discriminating, it's whether or not we're doing it with justice or in an unjust manner.
Yeah.
And so that's the first aspect of the bill. It would remove all of those protections. Then the second aspect would be around prostitution.
Okay.
So prostitution is legal in New South Wales at the moment.
Yeah.
It's long been legal, but there are certain barriers to advertising and where you can actually conduct your services. So, for example, you can't be within, you can't solicit for prostitution outside of school or outside of church or outside of hospital.
Yeah.
You can't. A gym can't also have prostitution services inside.
Yeah.
So this would scrap all of those.
Okay.
So you could stand theoretically, you could stand in the forecourt of St Mary's Cathedral and solicit for sex if that's what you wanted to do.
Okay.
So it's about taking away any type of, if you remove any of the barriers, it's about trying to take away stigma, right?
Okay,
That
yeah.
sex work is just as legitimate as any other profession.
Okay.
And so you should be able to conduct it wherever. But it's funny, right? There's a 150-metre buffer zone around abortion clinics. You're not allowed to pray. You would get arrested if you went and tried to pray outside an abortion clinic. But this bill's trying to let you solicit for sex outside a cathedral. Come on, right? Like, what have we come
Talk
to?
about consistency.
And again, they're labelling this bill as the equality bill. I don't know what that has to do with equality. It just seems, like I said, like the Archbishop said, to just have this anti-religious undercurrent that's going through it. So that's the second one.
So for prostitution, you could solicit these things within a gym or anywhere?
Within a gym, outside school pickup.
Okay.
So...
And currently it's illegal?
Currently it's illegal. Yeah.
Where can you solicit these things?
Not in, so there are places where you can't. And so
okay, so there's buffer zones.
There's buffer zones,
exactly.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to advertise like you would advertise a restaurant or something like that.
Okay, yes, okay. I understand.
So you can't publicly advertise.
So they select buffer zones. I mean, it's quite laughable because, I mean, we have buffer zones around abortion clinics, but so there are buffer zones currently in place. Let's say if it can't be around schools.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay, can't be around where a reach of minors or to put all the protections in place.
Can't have billboards on the side of the road or things like that.
Okay, yeah, which promote indecency and...
But this would change all of that. And it just seems strange. So anyway, that's number two.
Never thought about it that way, that they would be buffer zones.
Yeah.
So that's something new to me, definitely.
So
okay, what's number three?
Number three, sex self-ID.
What's that?
So it's the idea that you could just walk into Service New South Wales and say, hey, I want to change the sex on my birth certificate. I identify as a woman. Can you change my birth certificate to reflect that I'm a woman?
Okay.
Or I identify as a non-binary unicorn. Can you change the sex on my birth certificate to say I'm a non-binary unicorn? But then...
Is Maronite another gender?
I think we could test it. But then what that means is that would then give you access to female-only spaces.
Okay.
If you were to get arrested and locked up for something, maybe
you show your ID, I'm a woman. Maybe
praying outside an abortion clinic, you'd go to a women's prison. It would give you access to women's-only shelters, women's gyms.
So men could go to women's-only prison.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's going to be a hard administration. Yeah.
And also, if you're facing a lengthy prison sentence, wouldn't you want to go to a women's prison? I think if I was a man, I'd probably prefer a women's prison.
Yeah, exactly.
To a men's prison. And so that's one side of it. But the other side is that a birth certificate is how we tell in the church, how we sort of judge people's admission to sacraments. So if you're someone who goes to enter seminary, you have to show a birth certificate to show that you're male. If you've been through puberty blockers, you've had cross-sex hormones, and your birth certificate has been changed to say that you're a male even if you're born female, we've got a problem there with ordination. Sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, it is a real problem. I mean, it just means we actually have to be more specific in what we define. I mean, should this get through? I mean, what is a male? What is a female? So we really, really have to actually be specific. So, I mean, this would actually have the potential to cause serious problems.
When you got married,
if you think about it.
When you got married, you had to show at least a baptism certificate. Did you have to show a birth certificate?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we had to show a birth certificate, a baptism certificate, and we had to get that current within the last 6 months to show that we actually didn't get married before. There's a whole heap of paperwork.
But you have to have a birth certificate to show that we're marrying people of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
But again, if you've got birth certificates that have been doctored, then all of a sudden it puts the Church's sacramental life at risk. And this doesn't just go for Catholics, it goes for any faith that separates men and women for prayer, for liturgy, for other things like that.
Yeah.
So
and the Church wouldn't be able to say, oh, well, let's say two people want to abuse the system and say, oh, well, I'm a male, he's a female. And
what are they going to do, ask for blood tests now? Like, where does that put us?
Can we get a biological test? Can we get any other kind of test?
Yeah.
Whatever that means anymore. So
submit a DNA test before you get to have a wedding?
Will the Church just by discretion be able to say, well, we're not marrying you, sorry, rejected?
The Church doesn't have to marry anyone.
Exactly.
But then how do we know?
Okay.
How do we know if the people present, we take...
Let's say if somebody conceals that information in a very good way, appearance-wise, everything else, how do you know?
How do you know?
That's going to be another layer of problems.
Yeah, exactly right. Particularly if their key identification document, which is their birth certificate, is able to be doctored literally with signing a form.
That's a big problem.
It is a big problem.
Yeah.
On top of all of the other access to women's only spaces and women's sports.
I mean, forget church life. I mean, for our secular society, this is going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
This is going to be this presents serious issues for sports. This presents serious issues for schools. I mean, schools.
Yeah.
This is going to be an issue. Gyms,
change rooms.
I mean, it's funny. I think I went to pick up my sister or something from Fernwood. I just walked in. I said, "I'd like to apply." They got angry at me and they kicked me out. So I was just as a joke. So I mean, that could become a reality.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Like I said, and there aren't, and again, there are certain religions. I mean, I live in Western Sydney, and we've got hairdressers that sort of, women's only hairdressers or special rooms where women can take, Islamic women can take off their veil and things like that. If you start changing the law so that there are no such parameters, then you're denying a whole bunch of people just their rights to privacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is not about the Catholic faith. This is not about the Christian faith. This is about all other religions. Anyone listening who's of the Islamic faith, who's a Jew, a devout Jew, a Hindu, any other religion, should really be concerned at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Or anyone who cares about women's safety. I mean, how much do we
So
hear about...
we wouldn't have. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No.
We wouldn't have confidence in the system.
No. And we hear all about women's safety all the time and how do we keep women safe from violence and men need to step up and everything. Great. How about one of our contributions to the safety of women is not letting men so easily identify as women if they choose.
Exactly.
I don't know. Call me crazy.
It's funny. Yeah. It's not funny actually. It's just it's really remarkable. I mean, when you really think about it and the implications it would have. But are we up to number 4?
We're up to number 4. We're up to
number 4. Oh, well, there's more.
Yeah, the number 4.
There's more.
So
yeah.
So on a slightly related topic about sort of gender transition, but this time for minors, and at the moment the law is that a young person can consent to medical treatment from 14 years and older. So once you hit 14, you can go to the doctor without mum or dad, legal guardian, and you can go and seek your own medical treatment. But under the age of 14, you need the consent of a parent. Mm-hmm. So what this is saying is that if a child wants particular medical treatment, and the doctor agrees, then even if the parents object, the child and the doctor should be able to proceed with the medical treatment. And the big one here again is things like puberty blockers.
Yeah.
So should an 8-year-old child who's struggling with gender dysphoria and whose parents don't want the child to go through, they want the child to go through puberty and not take the puberty blockers, should they be allowed to stop that, or does the doctor get the right to step in? And at the moment, we are very, very strict about circumstances in which doctors can override the wishes of parents. Usually you need a court order.
Yeah.
Like you think about when I was a law student, you would do the cases about Jehovah's Witnesses who don't accept blood transfusions. And so if parents who were of the Jehovah's Witness faith declined to have their child have a blood transfusion, if the doctor wanted to give even a life-saving blood transfusion, you have to go to the courts and get the court to enforce that. That's how strongly we take and how seriously we take the rights of parents when it comes to their own children and to making decisions about their own children. This would completely turn that on its head and say that the child and the doctor can make the decisions. And again, this isn't just about the Catholic faith. Increasingly what we're seeing overseas are studies and studies coming out about the risks of these puberty blockers, right? They've been banned in the UK, they've been banned in Sweden, they've been banned in so many other places because of the uncertainty around bone density, fertility, all of these types of things. They're not as reversible as people are saying. And so when you've got countries overseas, Belgium is another one, that are banning their use and saying you are not permitted to use them on kids under the age of 18. You've got at least one Australian medical insurer saying we're not going to cover you if you prescribe cross-sex hormones to kids. You don't get your medical insurance anymore.
Wow, even the insurers.
Even the insurers are saying we cannot quantify the risk.
It's funny, a good indicator of, possible good investments or bad investments or bad decisions on, fiscal level could be, you look what the banks like and look what the insurers will approve. That gives you an indication the people taking on the most risk, fiscal risk possibly in this scenario, aren't insuring it. Yeah. That's interesting.
It's that's
very interesting.
When the rest of the world is going one way, New South Wales and other Australian states are trying to scream ahead in the other direction. And then it also risks children being used as leverage in sort of family law cases. And you've got at least one case running through the federal court at the moment where mum wants the child to go through gender transition, dad doesn't. So they're in the family court arguing over this poor child who's in the middle of a dispute between mum and dad over their medical treatment. So it's just strange, So again, and again, this is under the guise of the Equality Bill. There's nothing about this has nothing to do with equality. It's about protecting kids, preserving families, preserving the rights of parents to raise their kids how they want to raise their kids.
Isn't there one lucky last one?
It's one lucky last one, and
it's never going to end.
There's one just for this bill.
Oh wow!
And that's commercial surrogacy. So surrogacy is where you have a woman who an embryo was implanted into her womb. Either it's you've got what you call a commissioning couple or a commissioning parent. Yeah. It's usually their egg and sperm. It could be donors. It could even be the surrogates. Not usually though. And she carries the baby to term. Here in New South Wales and actually everywhere in Australia, that's only allowed for altruistic purposes. Yeah. So you're not allowed to charge people to do that. It's sort of something you do out of the goodness of your heart. Yep. There's a prohibition on commercial surrogacy. What this would propose is commercial surrogacy would still be not allowed in New South Wales, but a New South Wales couple could go overseas and commission a surrogate mother from a country overseas to carry their child and then bring that child back to Australia and raise it as their own with Australian citizenship and everything like that. The problem is that, so this isn't uncommon. Like Australia, I think, is the fourth highest user of overseas surrogates already, because other states have legalised this. We have a massive number of Australians going overseas and commissioning women in countries overseas. The US allows it, but that can cost in excess of sort of 200 grand or stuff like that. So those who can't afford that amount of money start going to countries where there's very little regulation or even no regulation.
Okay, yes, understood.
So some of the listeners might remember a few years ago there was the case of baby Gammy in Thailand, where they commissioned a Thai surrogate mother. She was 21 years old, implanted her with twins. The boy was diagnosed with Down syndrome. So a girl and a boy diagnosed with Down syndrome. They wanted the child aborted. The mother wouldn't agree to it. So they took the girl, the Australian couple took the girl back, left the boy the boy with Down syndrome in Thailand with the surrogate mother. So we're not taking him, just left him behind.
Why was that?
Because they didn't want a child with Down syndrome and the mother refused to abort him. So, well, that's not our problem.
Wow.
So left this kid behind. You see, a lot of...
we don't want the damaged goods.
We don't want damaged goods. And that's your problem. You wouldn't abort him, so that's your problem. And you see people going to places where there are extreme poverty. The Ukraine is a big one for Australians to go to.
Okay.
Because so many women in the Ukraine live below the poverty line. So many surrogate mothers are living in domestic violence shelters. So they've had to flee an abusive relationship and then become surrogates to bring themselves out of a shelter and actually afford to get into some accommodation.
Okay.
And while some people will say, well, that's the woman's right and this is a way she can make money and provide for her family, that's not fair, right? We should do better for women fleeing domestic violence than suggesting that they become surrogate mothers. It has a real dualistic approach to...
Where's the feminism there?
Yeah, exactly right.
I'm just thinking,
Yeah, absolutely. And it has a real dualistic approach to motherhood, right? The idea that I can carry a child in my body and that does nothing to my soul. It doesn't make me a mother.
Yeah. We're just trying to desensitize ourselves from anything that's actually important here. You're carrying a child. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
I know it's just a commercial thing, a process we're undergoing.
Exactly right.
We're reducing everything. We're desacralizing everything.
And even, there's not much more sacred than motherhood, right? And carrying new life within you. And so it's just...
to have that as a commercial interest.
Yeah. And then what happens? Okay, do you get to control whether she works or doesn't work during the pregnancy, how much she exercises, if she doesn't exercise, what she eats, whether she smokes, whether she drinks? Like, what elements of control can you have over a woman in that 9-month period?
Wow. Okay, so you're bringing a whole nother party. And we have to think about the control.
Yeah.
How do we regulate,
what
that mother is doing during that 9 months? What regulation do you have, or what say do you have over what a mother can actually do? Is carrying, what do they call them, a commission?
The commissioning parents, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I'm
just commissioning an artwork.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's in the back of my mind, yeah.
And then...
that's possibly so we're commissioning somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then, so that's in the cases where everything's above board, but you've also got, the previous family court judge was saying how it's one of the biggest forms of trafficking as well, of human trafficking. And women, in the same way that, women are promised, careers in hospitality or the entertainment industry or something like that, and then end up getting trafficked into domestic servitude or into prostitution or something like that. Another way they're trafficked is into surrogacy, forcibly implanted. I mean,
you were at Cardinal Pell's funeral, right? And you heard the drums outside, George Pell Go to Hell. I wonder, and there's many people who sort of part of this sort of cause, of trying to seek reprimands or something. You never hear this kind of where is this cause? When it comes to protecting, against trafficking and all these other issues.
They're silent. They betray in so many of these things. They betray the woman.
I don't see a consistency.
No, they don't. That's the thing. It's about anti-church rather than. And I have to say anti-Catholic in particular.
Or anything conservative.
Anything conservative,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I do think that
the church is in the way.
Particular dislike for the.
You know, maybe other religions. You know, the Abrahamic religions might be in the way. I think a lot of religions will be in the way. So it's interesting. You know, I don't see consistency with, you know, some feministic movements and other issues. You know, it just seems to pick and choose like a cafeteria.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I see. I don't see, you know, I mean, the church gets hounded, you know, over, and as it should be kept accountable for any failings or in the abuse crisis, and we definitely do sympathise. But, you know, where is the equal outrage against some of these things where there is a common element between, you know, trafficking and abuse or other issues? We want to protect everybody in all levels and scenarios. There needs to be a consistency. You know, activists in one area need to be consistent in other areas. So
yeah, absolutely.
Not
and
just pick and choose.
And to bundle all of this up and label it equality, it's just really, there's something really.
So okay, we've gone through the 5. I'm just trying to understand what exactly, why is it called equality? What's actually equal about it?
Well, because the idea is that at every point, the argument would be that there's some type of, you're promoting some type of equality. So if you remove religious protections from anti-discrimination law, then you are protecting equality for people with same-sex attraction or you know, who identify as transgender. If you allow prostitution, then you are making prostitution equal to any other type of employment, that it's not something that you should be ashamed of. It's just another job. You allow surrogacy, that means that a male couple should have equal opportunity to have a child than a heterosexual couple, or even a female couple, which is, they don't need a surrogate mother. So all of the, you know, sex self-ID, again, my identification documents should reflect who I believe I am.
So it's just peeling away any regulation for anything, just to say that we're equal. Just because I can do something. Just because I'm a child, I can bypass my parents who are my guardians at the age of 14. And it's quite ironic. When can we actually drink alcohol at the same time?
Yeah.
Is it 18?
18, yep.
I don't even think I drank alcohol at 18, so I don't think I drank alcohol till 20.
Yeah.
It's funny. So we allow people at 18. When are you allowed to smoke? Is it 16 or 18?
18, I think. You can't buy cigarettes under 18.
Okay, so we can't buy cigarettes, but we can make gender decisions at 14.
Or now younger than 14. The aim of this would be to make it.
I'm just not seeing the consistency here.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And what's the role of the government then? Shouldn't just everybody be equal and we all do our own thing?
Well, here's the thing.
So it can go, how far can it actually go? To say, oh well, we shouldn't have police equality. You know, we should have equal rights. Throw out the judiciary system. Yeah. What do we need that for? I mean, on that principle, you can really get rid of anything.
And I think the thing about this is what it does is it prioritises feelings over realities.
Yeah.
In any number of circumstances. And the thing is, when we're guided by our feelings, we're misled by our feelings, right? Yeah. We know that in any circumstances, we're not just talking about sex and gender, although it seems to be hot in the list of this equality bill. But, you know, your marriage shouldn't be dependent on feelings. There'd be some days where you'd feel more in love with your wife than other days, and that's okay. You know, the commitment you made is one. I
mean, you don't want someone in control of a nuclear power plant, you know, running our energy and our energy systems running by our feelings.
Running by feelings. You run by commitments, right?
Exactly. The reason we're alive sometimes, you know, because of energy and, you know, being on the road is because we're going beyond our feelings.
Exactly right.
Exactly. I mean, it just seems to be common sense.
It does seem to be common sense, but it's hard because when you package it up in this emotive language, you say it's all about, you know, kids who otherwise might self-harm if they're not treated in accordance with the gender that they want. It's about protecting people from discrimination. It's very, very hard when you get that narrative out there, then for people to actually have the time to unpick it and understand what's really going on. I mean, look, George, this is my full-time job, and sometimes it's hard enough for me to keep up, let alone people who are trying to, you know, hold down their own job, raise a family, you know, care for elderly parents.
I'm going to ask you this question.
Yeah.
I think I just thought about this today because I was actually on Instagram, scrolling through Instagram and just looking at Africa. You know, they asked an African man, it was very funny. They said, "What gender are you?" And he was confused for a few seconds, and he said, "I'm a mechanic." They just don't understand this concept of gender identity. Do you think, Monica, do we just know too much in the West, or do we just do we unnecessary? Is there an unnecessary intellectualism that's going beyond common sense in the West?
I think the African guy's probably smarter than most of the people pushing the gender ideology. Look, I think we're too prosperous.
Exactly.
In some respects.
Because we've often heard the saying, tough times create strong people. Strong people create good times create tough times, you know, and then we go back in the cycle. I mean, the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, a very great businessman, leader, that, you know, I watched one of his interviews, the leader of Dubai, the Sheikh of Dubai, he said, he really affirmed that. He said, you know, there's a possibility even our people could return to the sand, you know, and then the cycle continues. Strong people create good times create weak people create bad times. Have we just become too comfortable?
I think
where we could just think about anything. Let's think about gender. Let's think about, you know, gender roles. We've had too much luxuries in the West.
I think there is a little bit of that. I think when...
Whereas,
you know,
you're a Maronite, aren't you?
I am a Maronite.
Okay, so, I don't know, I didn't know... I didn't know whether I didn't know if you were Maronite for sure. Yeah, or the
I
surname,
am.
yeah.
I'm not the world's best Maronite. Sorry, Sayedna.
Well, me too. So, but you know, like my grandparents and perhaps your grandparents and other people would, you know, during tough times, during poverty, that's not people's priority. You know, to study and perhaps to study the arts. And perhaps ask questions about the nature of gender too much, or everything too much, or even theology. Sometimes you study the area of theology, people are asking too many questions that I think, in my head, just to my opinion, are they really necessary?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have too many luxuries in the West because we've been so comfortable for a period of time? Yeah, I feel like we've become too comfortable in the West.
And look, I think
too many luxuries.
I think that's part of it. I also do think that with an abandonment of religion, people are longing for somewhere to belong, longing for some type of identity. Where do you, I mean, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't find my identity in Christ. I'd be, human nature, we want to belong. We want community, we want communion. We're made for it. And I think there is a correlation between the abandonment of religion and then people looking to find their identity in other ways, including in unfortunately, the gender movement. Because where else do you find your identity? How many of these young kids who are experiencing gender dysphoria say, I didn't know, you know, what my identity was until I was looking on TikTok or I was looking on Instagram and I found someone talking about it and felt like they really spoke to me. Imagine that you find your identity thanks to and out of a stranger you've never met, someone who's making a video online.
Yeah.
That's a complete tragedy.
Yeah.
So I do think that has a lot to do with it as well. I do think that unless people can find their identity in God, then they're always going to look for something else.
Yeah.
But it's funny talking about people not thinking about gender in Lebanon and our ancestors.
I just can't imagine my grandmother who died at 95, born in 1916. Ask about gender, you know, or people in Ukraine at the moment, or people in Africa, people in Russia or other places, asking, you know, about this.
I've got to have eye surgery soon.
Yeah.
And the condition I have is apparently hereditary. And they say, do you have a family history of it? I say, how would I know? Like, there were no ophthalmologists on the farms in Lebanon where my grandparents were growing up.
Exactly.
Just, okay then, right? Of course they didn't think about things like this. They just did what they could to survive. But we're getting a generation that's now, that's prosperous in a way where they're not going to, they don't have to. I mean, as hard as times are now, and we all know there's a cost of living crisis, but still there is a measure of prosperity here that we haven't had before.
Exactly.
Which affords this type of self-exploration, I think.
Yeah.
And self-identification in a way that we probably didn't have time for before.
Yeah, and it may not last.
May not last. Look, please God, I do think that some of the gender stuff that we're seeing from overseas,
the
bans that are coming down on some of these, hopefully that will spread to Australia soon enough.
I mean, I'm very impressed by Europe now. European officials, and it seems like perhaps France might take, politically a complete U-turn. I mean, I'm very impressed by Hungary. I mean, I'm not here to express my political opinion on this show, but it seems like people are waking up all over the world to this. I think we're Australia. We're always late to anything. There's always a delay with us in Australia. We're ahead of everybody else, and yet we're delayed. So I think perhaps could these threats that are coming from within our society, with this bill being proposed, does this actually wake people up to become to actually wake up? Do you think?
Well, look,
because when there are threats, people wake up.
They do, but do you know what I mean? Like, this is hard. It's like I said, it's complex. Trying to amend 20 pieces of legislation at the same time.
Yeah.
It'd be great if people were sort of woken up to it now and started ringing their local MP and things like that, so that then the bill doesn't pass. But we might end up, if it does pass, then it might be 5 or 10 years' time as people start to see the effects when they start waking up. Because it's very hard sometimes to convince people without sounding like you're crazy. Right?
Because let's be real. Who sits there? Your average Australian. I mean, I just wrote this morning to my local local MP and a senator, just for issues that I'm passionate about. And yourself, you probably do it, and a lot of other people in my circles and people that we know in common would do it. But your average Australian they're not going to pay attention to 20 pieces of legislation. Your everyday person, a lot of people aren't engaged in politics. They're not interested in politics, but how are they going to know or keep track of these things? That's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Although that being said, so they put this bill out for an inquiry, and they only chose select individuals and select groups who were allowed to make a submission. They said, if anyone from the general public wants to have their voice heard, here's a survey that you can fill in, and basically it says, here's all of the different pieces of legislation. Do you agree to amending it or not?
Exactly.
85% of the people who responded rejected the bill. 85% said no. So those who are engaged, they're on it, right? They know this makes no sense. They don't want the government.
I mean, you don't have to be a conservative. I mean, we respect and love everybody who have their own opinions, but you don't have to be a conservative. I was just speaking to a good friend of mine. I mean, we don't share same views, and he's a very good friend of mine. I mean, and we can respect each other. We don't have to share the same views. And I think people get it. People have common sense. I mean, 85%, that's an overwhelming majority. And so it's an overwhelming majority.
You would think then that that'd be the end of the story. Once you have 85% of people coming back and saying no, why give this any more airtime? It's a bill from the independent member for Sydney. All the
or a waste of taxpayers' money.
All the government has to do is say, the people have spoken, thanks, no. But here we are. We've heard nothing from the government about what they're going to do with the bill.
We'll pray that this doesn't get through.
Absolutely.
But what can we do? I mean, you're here to share 3 practical tools.
I am here to share 3
What can we actually do?
It's the Catholic Toolbox, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Can't come with no
Everybody
tools.
has to leave with tools. And the tools being, what are we going to actually do?
Okay.
We have to do something.
Yep.
We're not just here to listen. I mean, you've laid it out. I think we understand what's wrong with it. As Catholics and as people of goodwill from our view. None of this is any medical advice or professional advice. Always a disclaimer. We always have to put a disclaimer. Nothing in this episode's professional or medical advice. Seek your own professional and relevant advice wherever you may do so. But from a Catholic perspective, we as Catholics have a moral obligation to rise, and everybody else who's Christian or of faith. What can we do to stand against this? Mm-hmm. What can we do every day tomorrow?
Tomorrow, okay.
When you wake up tomorrow.
Or
tonight.
There is a wonderful website, contactyourmp.org.au.
So contactyourmp.com.au. Contactyourmp.org.au.
Yep.
.org.au.
Yep. That will
Excellent.
make it very easy for you to contact your local state member of parliament. So this is a New South Wales issue. You're going to your state MP. That gives you a lot of tips to contact your state MP and tell them that you are opposed to this bill and you want them to oppose it. Right? That's the first thing. Go to the website, go to your local member, give them a call, write them an email, send them a letter, whatever it is, ask for a visit, ask for a meeting in person.
And this is state,
This is
MP.
Your state MP.
Not your federal MP or council. You need to make sure your state MP
Yep.
is the person you write to.
Is the person you write to.
And maybe even go into their office as
Go
well.
into their
Follow
office.
up and call them to follow up your email that you sent.
Ask for an appointment. Contactyourmp.org.au has some great talking points on it. You can write down some notes from this episode. You can reach out and we'll send you some notes. But otherwise, go and tell them that you're opposed to this bill. That you're one of the 85% that says no.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing is tell other people about this as well. Because the thing is that because it's being marketed as an equality bill, people aren't really understanding what is at stake here. So talk to your friends, talk to your family, let them know what's going on and what's at stake, and again, how they can get involved. And the third one, do I add prayer to this, or can I do 4? Can I do 4?
You can do 4,
right.
yes.
So we have to pray for the defeat of this bill.
Number 3.
We absolutely have to pray for the defeat of this bill. Because we know that this isn't a political issue, and a lot of these fights aren't going to be won in the political sphere. It's not like after the next election everything will change and different people in power. These are battles we're going to be fighting for a while. This is a spiritual battle. So we need to pray and get serious about sanctity ourselves, because it's only when we're pursuing personal holiness that things change. The other one I'll say is give support to people who are speaking up, and I'm not saying that selfishly, but your priests, your pastors, other people who raise these issues, who try to educate, sometimes they can see themselves a little bit out on a limb. Even politicians who speak up against these issues can find themselves out on a limb, find themselves attacked. If you hear someone speaking up about this, say a prayer for them, drop them a note of support, give them a thanks or something like that. Encourage them in what they're doing, because being out on the front line of some of this stuff can be hard and can open you up to personal attacks. So it's always nice.
I'll add a practical tool. I'm not a very good Maronite, but but call your cousins in the dozens.
Call your cousins in the dozens.
That's what we do very well, you know. I know. I think was it Charlie's show, Charlie Bake Off, airing here live. But I think that's what I'm so impressed by, at least the Maronites in Australia. They can rally very quickly, and all the other Catholics as well, everybody together. I think get a list of your friends, get a list of your cousins, get a list of your family people, list them, and get everybody together to send an email, or how can they write to the MP? Create a petition, write a letter, and you can add the signatures and names of every single person.
Add the signatures.
On there.
One of the great things is a phone call to the office, because it's easy to sort of ignore emails, to file them away.
Yeah, send it, then call.
Send it, then call. Pick up the phone and just say, look, this is my name, this is where I live, I'm in your electorate, and I want you to vote no.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember during the abortion debate, George, but the Catholics did that so well that I remember one of the MPs got a text message inside the chamber saying, the Catholics will not stop calling the office. You had MPs have to change their office phone numbers.
Isn't that why we pay we pay with our taxpayer dollars?
Exactly
right. We need to get value for money.
And the thing is that they need to hear from you.
They need to hear from you.
They need to hear from you because they need to have permission and they need to have the confidence to be able to walk into the chamber or walk into the party room and oppose this. And if they say, well, you know what, I've had 150 calls from people in my electorate telling me not to touch this. If we go ahead with it, then there's going to be trouble later on.
There's going to be implications for the next election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if they don't hear from you, they can't walk into their party room and say, they can't make up the calls. So give them a reason. Give them a reason to go in there and say, actually, this is what I'm getting. Because it makes a difference.
I mean, get value for your money. We're paying for these politicians to be in Parliament.
Yeah.
So we pay it with our taxpayer dollar. So get value. I mean, that's what they're there for you to write to them, for us to speak to our politicians, make our voices heard. And on an issue like this, we need to get our value for money.
Absolutely.
And get them working.
And if you feel bold enough, grab a few friends and ask for a meeting.
Exactly.
And then sit there and chat to them about it. So if the debate doesn't start this week, on Thursday, then it'll be pushed out into August, right? So you've got a month to get your act together.
Yeah.
Act now, though.
Get people together. I mean, it just starts with, just get an Excel spreadsheet or a list, write down everybody you know that's like-minded, and get everybody together. You could just get their permission over the phone to sign it, and everybody could see the document, put something together, and send it to your local MP. I mean, it's amazing what we did for the abortion, all the Catholics.
Amazing.
Can you detail a bit of what we did just to inspire people to stand up again? I think we've done so well. Catholic laity have stood up. Every time there's an issue, I feel like there's more momentum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now.
Look, for the abortion debate, it feels like, it's 5 years ago now.
5 years ago, wow.
But people like Rebecca Gosper and others, I remember they said, we want to get a petition out. We want to make it the biggest petition possible. But it was a time when they wouldn't accept online petitions, and so you could only do it pen and paper. And we had, hundreds of volunteers at every church on a Sunday.
Yeah.
For weekend masses, collecting signatures with clipboards and mailing them in and collating them, and from all around New South Wales. It was so pleasing to get, a packet full of surveys being mailed in from somewhere out in Forbes or something like that. From a parish there. So there was that. There were the two massive rallies, one in Martin Place, one in Hyde Park. Yeah,
that was massive, yeah.
Absolutely massive. There were two...
They could hear it from Parliament.
There were two round-the-clock vigils. So remember, there were people keeping vigil outside Parliament House, and there was another group keeping vigil before the Blessed Sacrament inside St Mary's Cathedral.
That's amazing.
So there were people around the clock. This is how... Look, yes, the vote didn't go our way, but we stood up.
We stood up. And that laid the foundation for the momentum that's there every time there's an issue.
Absolutely.
Every time there's an issue.
And we have to stand up. It'd be an absolute... You mentioned, God rest him, Cardinal Pell before. He used to say, to fight and lose is one thing, but to never put up a fight is a disgrace.
Exactly.
Right? This is our job. And when history comes to tell this time in the church, right, we want to see... Don't you want to see that you stood up? That you stood up and made your voice heard, that you stood up for what was right. So I think that it's our job to absolutely stand and speak the truth, to put up a counter-narrative that people aren't getting.
Because perhaps we might lose today's battle, but I think when the consequences come on a societal level, people will remember that we voted for abortion, and they see a degradation of human dignity over time, and then the next time it comes around, we could eventually win. So it's like a net effect.
Yeah,
we may lose battles, but the overall trend may flow in our direction.
And also, resistance is formative, right? One of my favorite, I think he's a blessed, Cardinal Clemens von Galen, was sort of Bishop of Munster during the Second World War.
Yeah.
And he has this great homily where he says that like a piece of metal is formed just as much by the anvil as it is by the hammer beating down on it, right? That all the anvil has to do is provide the resistance to stay steadfast, to stay strong, and it will form whatever is being beaten on top of it. So if the world's a hammer beating down, we have to stay strong. Look at people like Nellie Gray in the US, right? Nellie was the person who started the March for Life.
Yes.
She thought there would be one March for Life and then the law would change. She kept going and going, and everything got worse. So it started in 1974, and everything just got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
She died 12 years before Dobbs and abortion being overturned in the US. But if she hadn't have fought for those 40 years,
Yeah.
then you would never have had the pro-life movement that you now have in the United States. Maybe it's not for our generation to see the fruits of our work this side of heaven.
Exactly. That is a fantastic point.
We have to be prepared to make this the fight of my lifetime, of your lifetime.
Yeah.
So please, God, your kids, your grandkids will actually see some of the fruits. That's okay. We don't have to be... Of course we have to be concerned about fruit. Of course we have to be concerned about fruit. But not in a way where we think, well, that didn't work, I'm just going to give up. No,
do you think the Anzacs, when they died, do you think they... I mean, do you think a lot of them saw the fruit immediately? No.
You don't see the fruit immediately.
I mean, I think many people listening think, it all hits us, you know, we want to see results now, we want everything to happen now, it doesn't swell in our favour, we dismantle, but it's really, we're setting the foundation for the next, we're setting up a pipeline, essentially, for the future. It's a pipeline. We're not working to see results today, we're working for the long term.
We're relay runners.
I think that's what people need to take away from this episode, that we may lose battles today, but we're in it for the long run.
We're in it for the long run.
We could win battles today as well.
100%, and please God we do. But we do it so that a generation yet unborn will praise the Lord, right? And the thing is that we will win. Like, ultimately, because the culture of death is self-defeating. It's sterile.
Yeah, exactly.
Culture of death doesn't have children. It doesn't have grandchildren.
Yeah, exactly.
So we will outlive...
It doesn't seem to have identity.
No.
As well.
So,
I mean, that's a great way to defeat your enemy. You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just keep firm in your identity and who you are, and keep going, knowing that this is the work of generations.
It really is the work of generations, but we have to do our part today to see the results of the future. The freedoms we enjoy today were not bought yesterday; they were bought generations ago.
Yeah.
And praise God, we will see, God will give us consolation. We will win battles. Hopefully we win this battle in this regard to this, these pieces of legislation, 20 amendments to legislation. And I think definitely, I mean, the tools are pretty simple. We have to take action today. We have to, the biggest one I think is we have to talk to the MPs. They make the decisions in Parliament. And if your local MP is hearing day and night about this.
Yep,
and we do our part wherever we live in our electorates, and we get people together who are like-minded, and we make our voices heard, we can overcome this.
And it's not scary. I promise politicians aren't scary. Their staffers aren't scary.
We pay for them.
Pick up the phone. Yeah, exactly right.
We pay for these people.
Pick up the phone. You're paying for this service.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone and get what you ordered, which wasn't an equality bill.
It's a very Lebanese thing to get value for your money.
Absolutely.
We have to get value for money all the time, especially with our taxpayer dollars. So
we pay tax. Sorry, total joke.
This doesn't count as financial advice. But what a great discussion. But thank you so much for coming in today. And what would your last word of inspiration be for everybody listening?
It would be that God has already won the battle, right? He lets us participate in these fights, but we will win. We will outlive, outlove, outpray, outserve, outvocation any of these people who are trying to attack life, attack family. I'm so confident of that. I'm so confident that that's going to happen. That's my last words.
Amen. And thank you for tuning in to the Catholic Toolbox. Don't forget to subscribe to our weekly podcast alert. Go to thecatholictoolboxshow.com. That is thecatholictoolboxshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Go to The Catholic Toolbox. That is The Catholic Toolbox, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm your host and founder, George Manassa. Until next week, God bless, take care, and take action.
In this era of grave spiritual crisis, it is not enough to simply know about your Catholic faith. That is why we need a Catholic toolbox to equip us with the practical skills necessary to live our Catholic faith to reach our ultimate goal, which is heaven for all eternity. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. for the Catholic Toolbox as we hand you the tools to go forth, live the faith, and change our modern world today. Live on the Voice of Charity.